Good evening, everybody. This is the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, May 25th. We'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Scott.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, tonight I start our meeting on a sad note. Bob Herman passed away suddenly on Monday, early Monday morning. Bob was and has been a fixture in our town for more than 50 years. Not only was he a homeowner and a business owner, but indeed owned his business here in Westford for more than 50 years. In addition, Bob gave back to the town through his community involvement and his participation in the municipal government. Bob's committee memberships and impact on the town are way too long to list tonight, but he was a member of the Select Board from 1985 to 1996, and he's been a member of the ZBA since 2002, serving as its chair for the last 15 years. So in honor and in memory of Bob, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence before we begin our meeting. Thank you all. As we move ahead, though, and look ahead, I'd also like to take the opportunity now to welcome our newest member to the town staff, and it is our new principal assessor, Will Nasser. Will, welcome to Westford. We are thrilled to have you here. We hope you're settling in. I know you've only been here a week or so, but or maybe 2 weeks by now, but we hope you're settling in. I encourage all of us to stop by and say hello to Will, introduce ourselves to Will in the next couple of months or so as he takes over the job of assessor. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you, Will. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to meeting everyone.
Okay. Other announcements tonight is Sunday is our annual Memorial Day celebration. I am really happy and thrilled that we are back on the Common this year. I actually just listened to the weather forecast. It's supposed to be nice. As I said, I'm happy to be back on the Common and to be able to honor our veterans again this year on the Common. The ceremony will take place in the town Common. The honor roll reading begins at 10:30, and then the ceremony itself starts at approximately noontime when the honor roll reading is complete. If for some reason it should rain, then the ceremony will be moved indoors into the old center fire station. So really look forward to seeing everybody there as we honor our veterans this year. Ryan, is there anything you want to add to that?
You pretty much have it covered. We already did the cemetery flags. That was completed on the 22nd. We put out the wreaths on the monuments throughout town today. We were going to do that on Friday, but we did it early. And the street flags already went up. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's going to be the standard ceremonies and everything. We got a state senator Edward Kennedy, State Representative James Acero, and you, of course, Select Board Chair Andrea, to speak. And Westford Academy, we've got a couple of buglers that play taps, fire department, pipes and drums to play Amazing Grace. We weren't able to get the Memorial Day proclamation. It's usually an ambassador or 8th grader from the school, but they are away on vacation. We just found out last minute.
Okay, well, hope to see people there on Sunday to, as I said, honor our veterans. And that's all I have. Anybody else have anything for open forum from the board? Anita?
Yep, I had a really great call with a couple of WA students a week or so ago who are leading a project called Project Invisible Link. And Scott might remember it because we mentioned it, we talked about it during the Commission on Disability, and they're highlighting residents who live with invisible illnesses. And so if there's anybody who's interested in participating in a video project or being interviewed to just bring attention to what it's like to live with an invisible illness, or also to just bring more awareness to it and fight the stigma against it, please, I'm going to add a contact email into the chat, but it's projectinvisiblelink@gmail.com.
Great. Thank you, Anita. Ryan, do you have your hand up? Or
Yes. Sorry.
are you waving at me?
Completely forgot to mention that obviously we got the virtual tribute as well, which should be played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then available on YouTube and Westford Cat after. We just don't have definite times for those days yet.
Great, thank you. And I also realized that I forgot to do my usual announcements, which is to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, that all comments or questions that we receive from the public become part of the public record. And if you have a question or a comment, please type it in the question box so that we can see it, because when you simply raise your hand or use the icon to raise your hand, we miss it sometimes. So as I said, please use the question box. Thank you. And Jody.
Yes, I wanted to mention that the League of Women Voters Town Meeting Warrant Prep Review is next Thursday night, June 3rd at 7 p.m. It will be on WCAT, and virtually you may participate.
Okay, thank you. All right, not seeing anything else for open forum. We're at our 7:05 item, which is a public hearing, and it's a request for an alteration of licensed premises on a general law, chapter 138, section 15, all alcohol license at the Stony Brook Fish and Game. Is there a motion to read? Is there a motion to waive reading of the public hearing?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second. All those in favor? Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
John? Aye. Okay. Is this Patty or is this Douglas Keel? Who's presenting this? Jody, do you know? Or is it you?
I don't see Douglas online. I just unmuted Patty.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi,
I
Patty.
guess it's me. And Andy put this together, but I have talked with Captain Pick about it, and he gave me his concerns as far as some restrictions, which is up to the board if they would like to do. If the ABCC approves the altering of the premises, then they would just simply approve it with their recommendations or their regulations of, I guess what I'm trying to spit out is that they need to have boundaries. They need to, it just can't be open field. They have to have something to designate that this is an area where you can consume alcohol. So these were also Captain Pick's concerns, but the ABCC will also be concerned with that. So they would, if it is approved at our level, then the ABCC would work with the Stony Brook about making sure that it was the way they wanted it. As far as hours restricting the license or anything like that, that's up to the local licensing authorities, which is you, to be able to make any, you know, for instance, the police suggested, you know, being restricted from Thursday to Sunday or hours, and that can be the board's decision. But other than that, they have been very careful with putting everything together. They've been working on this for a long time, so they didn't. The reasoning behind it is they like their pavilion and it's for events, and they don't have to keep asking for one-day licenses, special licenses. And I think I've pretty much covered it unless you have any questions.
Hey. Questions or comments from the board? I don't see any. Is there a motion? Scott?
I guess make a motion to approve subject to public safety and ABCC comments.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
All those in favor? Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. And now I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Patty.
Welcome.
Okay, we're at our 7:10 item, which is a request from National Grid for approval of their proposed 2021 hazardous tree mitigation program for town-owned trees and trees within the town's right-of-way. Hello, Steve.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Hey, Steve, that beard keeps getting, you know, thicker and bigger every time we see you.
My playoff beard.
Oh, okay.
So thank you for your time tonight. As you know, National Grid approaches the town on an annual basis with their proposed tree cutting plan as part of their hazard tree mitigation program. Through this program, they have arborists who evaluate different circuits around town for vulnerable trees or hazard trees that could potentially fall and take down power lines and interrupt service. This is different than their vegetation management program, which is a much more comprehensive program that looks at trimming brush or vegetation that overhangs the trees. This program strictly looks at trees that are either dead, dying, or already in decay that could potentially fall down. So they've identified 29 trees along a particular circuit that runs along Oak Hill Road, Plain Road, and Nutting Road that need to be taken down. One of those trees is going to be trimmed extensively and may need to be taken down if they think following the trimming that it will not survive. But as I said, they identified 29 trees in total, as we typically do. We posted a public shade tree hearing. We're not required to do that. This is general maintenance for National Grid, but as the board has requested, and we always do, is we try to reach out to abutters and seek any sort of input we can from them regarding the program. So we posted the appropriate notifications on the trees and in the newspaper. We hosted a tree hearing yesterday. We had some input from various residents. Emily Teller, who's a large proponent for trees in town. Ron Gemma from the Westford Conservation Trust, and a resident from 18 Nutting Road participated as well. So, National Grid was able to answer a lot of their questions. We did receive support from the residents at 18 Nutting Road, who felt that the trees that were identified are a hazard not only to the power lines, but also to pedestrians and sight lines along Nutting Road. So we were able to close the tree hearing yesterday with support from those residents. The town engineer and the Department of Public Works have both evaluated the trees and agree with National Grid's assessment that they are hazard trees and should come down. So we're looking for approval from the select board tonight for them to advance their hazard tree mitigation program for 2021.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I don't see any, but I see that Emily has her hand up. No, she just took it down. Okay. So I guess all of Emily's questions were answered yesterday, although I can't tell. Now it's back up again. Emily, do you have a question or a comment? And if so, Eric, can you unmute her?
Yes, I think I'm now unmuted, and I appreciate being able to come yesterday to the hearing. I'm really excited that Steve Cronin temporarily has the role of tree warden. I think he's really taking this seriously. And I'm fine with this proposal by National Grid, knowing that it's dead, damaged, or decaying trees. But I also just would like to mention again that we do have $15,000 in reserve by the DCR grant from the last time National Grid took down, worked on 1,000 trees here. And I hope that the select board will do everything in your power to enable a tree planting plan to happen with staff time, so that we can obtain those thousands of dollars to plant new trees. And also, as I talked to Steve about, and he agrees, there needs to be some cooperation between Highway and Parks and Rec, but more, there needs to be a partnership with neighborhoods in town, because the watering is such a significant part of those trees living. So my voice is here. I want to keep you guys apprised of the concern. And since I'm on Westford Climate Action, which is a volunteer committee, carbon sequestration is so important, and our trees are part of that. So thank you for your continuing support. And I'm also impressed that the person who's in charge of this project, Matt DeTerling, is an arborist, and he's hoping to not go more than 40% in the trimming program too. Thank you, and welcome John Cunningham into your new role.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
So to Emily's point, the town recently applied for a municipal vulnerability preparedness action grant to develop a tree planting plan to look at our tree inventory, invasive species, all those things. So our hope, we're optimistic, if we get that plan, that we can then apply for the National Grid grant that we have, and really get the best bang for our buck, and try to get those trees and implement that plan. Great.
That's terrific. Terrific that you applied for that grant. Hopefully we'll get it. So, all right. I guess with that, I need a motion to approve National Grid's hazardous tree mitigation program as presented to the town.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at our consent agenda. And on our consent agenda tonight is a request to approve the following. A special license request for a summer barbecue at the H.E. Fletcher Club on Sunday, June 13th from 1 to 5 p.m. The applicant is James Spiller on behalf of the H.E. Fletcher Club. A Father's Day clam and lobster bake at the Stony Brook Fish and Game on Sunday, June 20th from 1 to 5 p.m. And the applicant is Daniel LaFerriere on behalf of the Stony Brook Fish and Game. A bridal shower at the Stony Brook Fish and Game on Sunday, June 27th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The applicant is Robert Simard. use of the town common for the annual Strawberries and Arts Festival on Saturday, June 19th, with a rain date of Sunday, June 20th, from 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Another indication that times are returning back to normalcy. We have the Strawberry Arts Festival this year again. And lastly, an outdoor morning church service on Sunday, July 4th, from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The applicant is John Rails on behalf of the Cornerstone Congregational Church. So is there a motion to approve these consent agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are a little early, but we're at our 7:30 p.m. item, which is a continued discussion of the stormwater management utility fee and credit policy and a follow-up with respect to Richard Paglia's request concerning this. So hello again, Steve, and yes, Mr. Paglia is on is online. So okay, so I guess Steve, do you want to start where we are, and then Mr. Paglia will certainly give you an opportunity to respond.
Sure. For the record, the agenda shows Mr. Paglia's property is 14 Preservation Way, but actually his property is 16 Preservation Way. But just for history, Mr. Paglia did apply for a stormwater utility credit, which he did receive, but that credit only allows him a reduction of one tier. So he went from a tier 5 property and a fee of $150 per year down to a tier 4 property of $97.50. He's requested that the select board review the current utility fee and credit policy for the potential to allow up to a further reduction in tiers for residential properties. Non-single family residential and commercial properties can receive up to a 50% reduction in their stormwater fee, whereas single family residential properties are only permitted up to a one-tier reduction. When we developed the stormwater fee as well as the credit policy, it was actually recommended by Raftellus, our stormwater consultants, that we don't offer any sort of credits for residential properties. But the board ultimately decided to establish a 5-tier structure to try to reduce fees on properties, since there's such a vast spread among tier 1 and tier 5 properties, rather, and also just to give them the opportunity to apply for a credit if they had, in fact, designed and installed stormwater BMPs on their properties.
Okay. Eric, I saw Mr. Paglia as part of the attendees, but now I don't see him.
I've actually upgraded him to a panelist, Andrea.
Oh, okay. That's why. So, Mr. Paglia, certainly want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, like I said 4 weeks ago, I spent upwards of $150,000 conforming with the stormwater management plan about 11 years ago when my house was being built. We were actually application 001, the first residential property in the town, and the stormwater management policy wasn't even fully enforced. It wasn't even fully written. The town engineers really weren't even 100% sure about a lot of the questions. So we went through hoops and delayed the ability for us to move into our house by a few months. And we've put so much money into our property to mitigate all the water runoff. And so, when we were given the opportunity to appeal, and I learned that, we were only allowed to drop from tier 5 to tier 4 out of principle, it didn't sit well with me, because, to be honest, I feel like if I qualify for tier 1, why shouldn't I be paying at tier 1? And I just don't understand why there's this 1 tier reduction limit, or maximum reduction in 1 tier. That's my basic question. I feel that if I qualify, if my property qualifies at the tier 1 level, that's where I feel I should be at. And I don't see why I shouldn't be able to drop from tier 5 to tier 1.
Thank you. Okay, so when we established this policy about a year ago, there were certainly many unknowns when we set the policy and when we studied it and came to at least what we believed was a fair assessment and a fair program. Initially, when the program was first proposed to us, there were only 3 tiers for residential homes, and we thought that was not fair, given the wide range of values that we have here in Westford. So we did expand it to 5 tiers in the residential. We also had long discussions with our consultant about credits and how they should be determined and when they should be determined. And after, a pretty extensive and thorough discussion, determined, at least to start with, that we were only going to permit 1 level of credit for residential homes at this point in time. We also, I think, made it clear in our policy that we would be reviewing this policy after 3 years, I believe. Thanks, John. I see you nodding your head. Thank you.
Sorry.
After 3 years to assess and evaluate the program itself. And so that's how we reached the decisions that we reached and why we implemented the policies as we implemented it. I certainly I hear you and I understand your question, and it's a valid one. But I think with the program, this is sort of the first round that we've been through in terms of stormwater fees and management and assessments. I think it may be that we need to do what we said we were going to do, which was to take a look at this over the course of 3 years and see exactly how the program works. Is it working? What isn't working? Does it need to be tweaked before we can make an evaluation that we should be changing it in any wholesome way? So I don't know if other folks on the board would like to add to that. Scott? And then Tom?
Question for perhaps for Steve, but we created 5 tiers based upon impervious surface, right? So the idea was the impervious surface was a proxy for runoff. So looking at this property, to say that it's equivalent to a tier 1 isn't really true, because of course the impervious surface is still tier 5. But I guess the question is would the runoff be equivalent to a tier 1 given the mitigation that's in place?
Unfortunately for this particular property, it's one of the most disadvantaged residential properties in town. It's built on the side of a hill with poorly draining soils. There was a significant amount of vegetation and trees that needed to be removed in order to develop the property and to contain the stormwater of the property. So there was a significant investment. There are significant stormwater controls on the property itself. But, based on the amount of impervious surface, it's nearly impossible to mitigate that gallon for gallon. It reduces it significantly, but to the extent of a tier 1 property, I think that's a difficult thing to argue. The most common size residential property in Westford has about 3,500 square feet of impervious surface. A tier 1 property, we set that below 2,000 square feet, and then a tier 5 property is over 5,500 square feet. So, as you can see, a tier 5 property is, nearly 130% greater in impervious surface than a regular or an average size property in Westford. So this particular property is 28,000 square feet of impervious surface. So that's significantly larger than one ERU or a single tier property. So it's difficult to argue, I think, that you can reduce all the stormwater on a property that large to the equivalent of one tier.
Okay, Tom?
So with respect to Mr. Bagley, and also Andrea, I agree with your general idea that reviewing this in 3 years, I think, is a good process point. Just my memory of this was that we all bear the cost of managing the stormwater management in town, and so even if the property does manage its runoff well, we still all have to bear that burden collectively. And so my memory of what the consultants recommended was, let's find a proxy that works, that's relatively simple, but with an acknowledgement that what someone does to mitigate on their own property has really a limited effect to the overall responsibility we all share for all the roadways where there are not abutting residents, roadways where there's a lot of historic maintenance requirements. We all need to bear that cost. So my memory is that we added this reduction really as a reflection of respect for people that have taken extra steps. And so if we're looking at the policy, really, not this particular situation, my sense is it is a good policy. This reduction of one step is really meant as a positive recognition, not as some sort of calculation based on actual impact, because that's really not how the cost is borne by all of us. It's really borne collectively on all the roadways, all the stormwater, and we all have to share. So I think the policy, continues to work. It sounds like it respects at least the idea that I had when we discussed and approved this. And I think coming back to it after a little bit more extensive period of time is probably best.
Okay. You have all just frozen it on my screen, so I don't know if anybody else has any if any of the other board members have any other comments. So if you do,
I see John's hand.
Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. While I figure out how to unfreeze my screen.
Okay. Well, as you may recall, when I was on a previous committee, I wasn't too much in favor of this being a fee. I was leaning more towards being kind of a tax. And my question of Steve would be, do we have any other properties similar to Mr. Paglia's that they've done a lot of remediation or made a lot of changes and they would have the same issue?
No, unfortunately, I mean, Mr. Paglia's property was developed at a time, following the new EPA regulations. There haven't been a significant amount of residential properties that have required stormwater management permits. I think we have a half a dozen total. Some of those properties have received tier reductions. They haven't, unfortunately, had to, invest the amount of money Mr. Paglia has for his particular property. So I don't think there's anything really comparable. There are some commercial and non-single family residential properties, that have had to undertake those stormwater improvements in order to develop those properties. They're only eligible for a 50% tier reduction as low as one tier, so $75. So that's the lowest they can get. I don't know offhand if any of those properties have been reduced to that level, but that's, for comparative, comparative reasons, that's basically the lowest that they could get.
What's our experience so far as collection? What's the budget look like? I mean, we've gone through the 2 phases, I think, of collecting stormwater fees. What does that look like?
Our collections have actually been great. They told us to estimate anywhere between 8 and 10% uncollected. We're actually even lower than that. So we're in great shape for this current fiscal year. We'll be coming before a annual town meeting in the next couple of weeks to actually ask the town to adopt a lien process for stormwater collections as a method to make sure that any uncollected is collected in the future. But as of right now, we stand in great shape. I think a lot of that is due to the the participation of the public throughout the development of the stormwater policy, as well as the public information and, just the town in general recognizing, the need to protect its resources.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree that we probably need to play this out for the 3 years to get an idea of where we stand. But I think I would I'm sympathetic to his issue here. And I might recommend that at least we take another look at the 1-tier reduction and maybe possibly modify that if somebody's gone to extraordinary lengths or put in a lot of money to mitigate the runoff, because not every property is the same. The impervious surface does not necessarily get to kind of an equal distribution of the cost. So, I think going to 3 years would be fine. I would stick with that. But I think we ought to take a look at that in light of what his concerns are.
Anita? Thanks, John. Anita?
Mr. Paglia, do you have some information about, I know that you put in a lot of effort, a lot of money and time into the drainage system on your property, what leads you to believe that it would go down from tier 5 to tier 1? Is there information that kind of helps support your that drop in the amount of runoff that would have been produced by your property?
Yes, I have extensive drawings that I provided to Paul Sterrett, and that's what I had to actually. In fact, I didn't even need to submit them when I appealed this. He already had, because Paul was very much involved in this project right when the project was being built. And from what I'm told, that the assessment of the impervious surface was done from aerial photos, satellite photos, which is fine. I agree that that's probably the best way you could do it. But what aerial photos don't show is that all the runoff from the roof of my house goes into a Cultex system, basically a second septic system that I have in my backyard that collects all that runoff. That doesn't go down the street, doesn't flow down the front of my property. So none of the water from my roof is going down the street. It's actually staying on my property in a Cultex system and slowly leaching into my property. My tennis court, I have crushed stone all around the perimeter of that. My driveway, I have swales down the front of my property. Again, $150,000 worth of improvements I was required to make by the town. And this isn't about money. It's about principle. It's about doing the right thing. And Steve, you indicated that there's six residential properties that require a stormwater permit. I would think if there's only 6, I would think it would make sense for the town to look at just those 6 and place those pieces of property at the right level, the amount of effort to look at 6 pieces of property. Do the engineering evaluation and places at the right level. To me, that doesn't seem much to ask.
John?
I just had one comment. In your message, you said that your improvements cost you almost $100,000. Then you quoted another figure of $150,000. Did something change?
Yeah, it was somewhere in between. I mean, I'd have to go get the records, but it was somewhere in between 100 and 150,000.
Okay.
Scott?
I guess my problem here is, as Tom pointed out, we have a shared need to, burden ourselves with this cost, but that's the idea of the tier 1, so that we would never go below, the a tier 1 for anybody, that everyone would pay something. And I look at this property and say, well, it probably is, not a tier 1 from what Steve's indicated, but you don't really know because we aren't looking at runoff, right? So is it a tier 3? Possibly. So I guess the question I have here is, well, we make policy, right? So we're trying to say, should we change a policy of one step or not? Whether to reduce one property, I think, that's the purview of our committee that looks at appeals, correct? So I think what we can do tonight, can we actually say that under some circumstances, which I'm not quite sure how to define, that we would lower something by more than one tier? And if so, what would that metric be? Because I'm inclined to think that one tier reduction is probably not fair in this case, but I'm hard pressed to think of what actually would be the correct formula to get something that is more fair.
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak or not, but
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm not suggesting that my property is definitively at level 1. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. I'm not the one that would have to look at the engineering drawings. I would assume someone like a Paul Sterrett could look at the engineering drawings and, maybe the runoff is already detailed somewhere hidden in the details of those drawings. But my only point is that I don't feel like I should be limited. If I truly belong at level 3 or level 2, then put me there. But don't limit me to just one step reduction. Put me where I belong.
Well, I think that the issue right now is, as Scott and Tom have identified, one is, quite frankly, we're not sure, if maybe you're at tier 5, maybe you're not, maybe you're at tier 1, 2, 3, or 4. We just don't know right now. And we developed this policy with the idea, as I said, that we would look at it in 3 years. This is a shared expense among the entire community. We all have to share this and bear this burden. And while I hear you and I understand that right now you think that you're not being treated fairly, my concern is about starting to amend a policy right now that we really don't have enough information to do so, based just on, and I don't mean to underestimate your concern, but just based on one issue right now. So I don't know that we should be, let me finish, please. I don't know that we should be wholesale changing our policy at this right now. And that I think we need to play this out a little bit more. Scott had his hand up first, John.
Okay, just a question, I guess, could we, my issue is how do we make a policy that makes sense? But I believe that Paul Sterrett and Steve are on that appeals committee, correct? So could the board decide that we would allow a, say, 2-tier reduction if that was merited by the engineering, as a way to say that, we don't want to be, saying yes to everybody and dropping tiers, but when someone spends 6 figures on remediation, I'd like to think we could do a little bit more than one tier.
If it were justified, I think is what you said, Scott.
Right, that's why I think you have to look at the, engineering, and that's not my purview. That's where Steve and Paul come in.
So let me ask the question to Steve, assuming for a minute what Scott just said. Is it possible for you and Paul Sterrett to look at engineering documents and the documents that Mr. Paglia has and determine the amount of runoff from his home?
So we would have to obviously evaluate each system and each property on a case-by-case basis. I think you'd want to limit it to only those properties that have stormwater BMPs that have been engineered and designed in compliance with, the stormwater bylaws and regulations. Opening it up too much, would allow people, the opportunity to apply for credits for things that aren't necessarily proven, to work in terms of stormwater mitigation and treatment. So, there's the possibility to do that, yes. But like I said, it would be case by case. It would also, require the property owners to, as they have to under their current fee reduction, to maintain those in a way that they operate as designed. So it would be something that we'd want to be able to, as we can now, review on a 3-year basis. But yes, they could be evaluated, on a per property basis.
So you could, just so I'm clear, so Mr. Paglia could submit his engineering drawings to you and Paul, and I understand that Paul already has them, and the two of you could take a look at it and determine whether or not or how much stormwater is running off the property. Is that fair? If I got that right?
To the gallon, probably not, but in terms of, a factor, yes, probably.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I think that's worth looking at. One of the concerns we had earlier on in this program was requiring people to have engineering drawings on something, so they'd be spending more money hiring an engineer to do this than they would be getting mitigation. As a member of that panel, I think I was appointed to that last meeting.
You were? No. You volunteered, John.
Well, in a moment of weakness, yes. But I think that would be worth looking at. I think Mr. Paglia has some good points on that.
Tom?
I understand Scott's point. Actually, I was thinking about something similar. The reason to come back after a period of time and look at this all together is that then we can kind of walk through with the information we've learned and really take this all into account. Because I think if we said, only people who have these special permits or develop their property after the new EPA guidance would be eligible for a second tier, is that fair to people who did it the day before the EPA guidance came in? I guess I think that the policy actually holds and is pretty reasonable. And I think the intent, at least in my mind, of reducing a step was more as of a incentive and recognition rather than some sort of actual engineering calculation about runoff. And so I don't know, I just feel like it would be better policy for us. And this is really the issue, the policy, for us to think about this more deliberately at the time that we intended.
All right. Mr. Paglia, I know you had wanted to say something earlier, and is there anything you want to add before I ask for what the board's pleasure is?
Yeah, I guess the last comment I'll say is that we know I don't belong at level 5, because Paul Starrett did review the engineering drawings and he dropped me to 4. I got the sense in talking to him that was the most he could drop me. So he has, I believe he has the ability to review my drawings, which he's done, and place me at the right level. But again, he was bound by this maximum 1-step reduction. So I would think, looking at those engineering drawings, he could look at them again and put me at the proper level.
So Paul is here tonight if you want to ask for his comments.
Oh, yes. Paul actually is now online and has his hand up. So Paul, did you want to weigh in?
Clarify and to appreciate Mr. Paglia's situation, but this property was not able to satisfy the requirements without connecting directly to the town's drain system. So we will be glad to evaluate individual properties as they come forward, but I can tell you now that this property, I wouldn't recommend a favorable change beyond the 1 tier, because again, they had to connect to the town's drain system in order to be able to satisfy the requirements.
Thank you.
So they weren't able to keep it all on their property.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Paul. All right, any other comments from the board? So we probably need to do this by motion. Is there a motion? Scott?
I had one until Paul's comments kind of changed. My thought had been that we would allow, a second tier reduction. We're talking about 6 properties with plans thereabouts. So it wouldn't seem unduly burdensome to, look at those plans as part of the appeal process and lower the tiers by more than 1. Maybe it's 2. But we've only got 1 appeal right now, and from what Paul indicated, he probably wouldn't change his mind to go to a 3 anyway. So now let's talk about a policy change that I'm not sure has any basis in appeals. So I don't really have a motion other than I think to say what we could have said half an hour ago, which was to keep the policy intact.
Well, that could be your motion.
Okay, I guess the motion is in light of, engineering comments that we just defer this decision until our 3-year review as we would have planned anyway.
Second.
Okay. I think we've discussed this unless anybody else has anything else to say. And so with that, vote John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Paglia, for bringing this to our attention. We certainly will be mindful of it as we move forward. All right.
Okay, thank you.
We are at our 7:45 p.m. item, which is our continued review of warrant articles for our annual town meeting, which is Saturday, June 12th, at the field at Westford Academy. And tonight we are doing the planning board and zoning articles. So the first one is Article 20, which is to amend the zoning bylaw to allow for home occupations by right. And hello, Jeff.
Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Good. How are you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you. So for the record, Jeff Morissette, your Director of Land Use Management. And as you mentioned, the first article relates to home occupations by right. And high level, what we're looking to do here is to simply allow for those home occupations that would not be perceived as a nuisance, would not be really observable to the casual viewer that there's any business going on. We would like to throw out there for consideration by town meeting that it should be allowed by right. We think this is good for both businesses that might incubate from the home as well as the residents. And we've had a large number of prospective applicants who have wanted to do, say, bake home goods and sell them at farmers market or go off site to other stores. And many of them decided not to proceed forward with this because of the permitting process. It's about a 3-month process when you add up all the timing, and approximately $1,000. And for those modest businesses, that can be a severe detractment to them moving forward. So we think this is a good opportunity to streamline permitting and to keep things in place if it is a more intensive business. So I don't know how much more detail you would like, but the planning board did conclude their public hearing on this last night, and they unanimously recommend this to town meeting.
Any questions from the board? I don't see any. So is there a motion to recommend for town meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is Article 21, which is to amend the zoning bylaw sections 2.1.1 regarding 2.1.1 establishment, 5.3 signs and special districts, 10.2 general definitions, Appendix A, table of principal use regulations, and Appendix B, table of accessory uses regulations to define and regulate restaurant drive-through facilities. That was a mouthful. Jeff?
So there should be with us tonight also Planning Board member Bob Schaffer. I don't know if he's there.
Yep, he is.
And he was, if you're so inclined, he would like to speak to this, and I will assist answering any technical questions.
Okay. So Bob?
Good evening.
Hi there.
I got two different audio streams, and unfortunately, you unmuted the wrong one. Let me just come up. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, since last fall, we've been requested through the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, as well as the town manager, through the select board, to re-examine the one second here. Look at this issue. So since that time, we've initiated a survey. The survey was begun back on the 6th of May. It will conclude at 3 p.m. on the 4th of June. And that to date, we've had 1,619 responses from residents. In addition, we've done a lot of research. I've been working with the EDC. I've been working with fellow planning board members, and we've now put together the plan that you see before you. We've established a drive-through restaurant overlay district concept, which encompasses all of the parcels that abut Route 110 that are in the commercial highway district. And we are working to prepare a plan or a map that shows all those parcels that will be presented to town meeting. There is a draft that was present in the planning board packet last night, and I'm not sure if it's made it into
I just lost Bob's sound. Is it just me?
No, it's everyone.
Okay. It's not just me, okay? It's me, okay?
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sounds like you're on two streams, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm now on the one I want to be on because I was having problems with my network at home. So here we are. So what we've also done is we've looked at a number of standards that we would control this through. One, we would look at only allowing this for restaurants that could be established as an end cap or a standalone. We look at it so that the restaurant must allow for some eat-in service as well as eat-outside service. And we've also established standards for how we would establish the regulations on signage and on the regulation of the microphone speaker ordering system. Now, last night during the hearing, we got questions about why we aren't promoting alternative ordering systems. And we're not encouraging that. What we are doing is strictly looking at the more onerous aspects of a drive-through restaurant, such as the speakers, the signage, and making sure we have tight controls and standards that would allow us to the maximum extent possible to regulate effects on Westford character. We also now have got strong standards in there for idling. And we look at the average wait time, making sure that it is well below an acceptable level. And if it is not, then we look at establishing lane queuing systems and temporary parking for customers awaiting delivery of orders. And then we would institute controls for signage that would prohibit the idling of internal combustion engine powered vehicles. So I think we've done the maximum extent possible to really address all of those environmental concerns and all of the concerns with respect to character. We do not believe at this time that litter and trash from this kind of a restaurant is a major concern. Now, while these restaurants that we think about with drive-thrus, we are able to identify their litter and trash because of the bags they sell the product in. We don't think it's because of drive-through or curbside pickup customers. It's predominantly, we believe, associated with those customers that walk into the restaurant, order, and walk out. We just don't believe we have any evidence from the past year of curbside pickup to show that there's been a significant increase in littering and trash from these kind of restaurants. So we're doing everything possible. We will continue to do everything possible through the special permitting process to ensure that there's an appropriate number of trash receptacles on the site, and that we will work with these establishments with an anti-littering program as we go forward. The last thing I want to emphasize is that this is a special permit. It's a discretionary permit. We've also, when I worked with Dylan O'Connor on the board, we've looked at this and we classify any drive-through restaurant as a major commercial project. And this allows us to come in and establish more controls and more reviews with more engineering analysis than it would be possible for just a traditional small business. So with that, I think I'm open for taking questions at this time.
Okay, so before that, Jeff, do you have anything to add?
Just one point. I would say that Mr. Schaffer and Mr. O'Connor and a lot of folks have done a lot of work over the past month. And so that led me, they made a lot of changes to address the various concerns heard from residents. And so in doing so, they did somewhat expand the scope of their initial, what they initially presented. And so out of an abundance of caution and after consulting with town council, the planning board is going to hold a new public hearing process such that the notice matches clearly what is covered under the warrant and in the suggested language. There is no issue with respect to what is on the warrant and the language that is before you now. That appears to be consistent. So as a precautionary measure, they're going to hold a new public hearing on June 7th.
Okay. Questions from the board? Okay. I don't see. Scott?
I mean, at that point, it sounds like we would want to defer our vote until after June 7th then?
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I think, you know, we should defer our vote until after we hear from the planning board and what their final vote is on this. But, you know, this is an opportunity for any of us to ask questions or comment about what will be there on their public hearing on June 7th. And also an opportunity for the public to hear about it as well. So that's why I kept it on, you know, that's why it's on the agenda for tonight, even though I knew we couldn't vote on it. So Tom, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just really a comment. So the questions I've heard from the public are primarily, is it limited in geographic scope? Is there a careful process for approval? So there's plenty of steps for the public to weigh in and have input along the way. And then questions about sort of environmental impact and idling. So I think this proposal does a good job of making clear the geographic restriction, outlining the careful process and the many chances for review that people have who'd want to apply for this. And I think any mitigation that can be included to reduce idling. I know often someone who's going to a drive-through may not be choosing between parking going in and going through the drive-through. They may actually be deciding to drive to Chelmsford instead. So I think it is smart to look at this as, let's take every opportunity to mitigate and not necessarily consider it, consider the idling issue to be a knockout. So I feel like this group's done a lot of good work, sort of exploring this with the public. And I know you've got a lot of support also from the disability community, from the young parent community. So want to acknowledge all that work that's gone into this.
Thanks. And just in terms of mitigation and the idling, well, I'm certainly am not downplaying that. the very, sort of practical and real question is, how does that get enforced? But I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know that anybody knows the answer to how you enforce that on a regular basis. But it's just a question out there.
If I could address that, Andrea.
Sure.
So, two things I want to emphasize. One, not only are we going to worry about when you come through the drive-through line, and if it's a restaurant that has a longer delivery time, such as a fast casual versus a fast food, then you would go into an automatic queuing system that uses waiting customer parking spots with a signage. Secondly, I think we've all been through fast food restaurants where you go through, there's a problem with the order, and they tell you to go into a parking spot. What we're going to do with any of these restaurants that come through is ensure that those parking spots are all signed parking spots with a sign encouraging strongly the customer to turn off their engine. And lastly, it came in too late for us to react to, and I don't think it's in the purview of the Westford Planning Board, but rather the Select Board. We have received several comments because Weston just passed a bylaw with fines for cars idling more than a specified amount of time. So this is something I think we will probably work with the Select Board on in the future to suggest looking at for whether or not you can put in those kind of fines. But we don't believe this is within the purview of the Planning Board. All we can do is put in the appropriate signage through the permitting process.
And I understand all that, but it still goes back to my question is you can do all of that, but it still goes back to enforcement and whether people are really going to comply with it. I have one other question for either you or Jeff, which is my understanding is that so long as you have, or so long as a restaurant has a minimum of 10 seats, that they can be permitted a drive through. They can be permitted drive-through access. Is that right?
That's correct. And I should have mentioned that we looked at surrounding communities, and we actually, the EDC and I have met with Chelmsford, land use developer and the planner. We've been researching what's happening in Acton, because Acton has this on their town warrant for the 21st of June. But in Chelmsford, they have a concept in which you look at these fast casual restaurants for their Route 129 special district, and they look at ensuring that the restaurants have both dine-in as well as outside dining services. We didn't go as strict as Chelmsford, where they look at 50 seats. I think I talked with Jeff and I talked to some other members of the board, and we decided 10 seats right now because in terms of COVID, we've got restaurants that are greatly reduced in capacity. I think that meets the intent that this restaurant doesn't just try to become a drive-through kiosk. It has to offer a multitude of dining options. So we're doing everything we can to ensure that Westford residents have all options open to them. We don't have it in the bylaw, but similarly, we are looking at multimodal ordering systems, be it via smartphone, via call-in service, or by drive-through, drive-up kiosk. And that will all be something that gets looked at through the special permitting process.
Okay. I'm just concerned that, some small little place could put 10 seats and, and call it a restaurant, and serve, coffee and muffins and, have and be qualify for a drive-through.
And again, that was food for thought. We are certainly open to discussing this at town meeting or taking your input now. We will make an amendment through the hearing process.
Personally, I think 10 is a little too low. Maybe 50 is too much, but I think 10 is. I think if folks wanted to, they could get around the 10-seat requirement fairly quickly and easily. Just one board member's opinion. We have some questions from our public, so let me go to them. Okay, Chauncey Chu writes that he has a couple of comments. So Eric, if you could unmute Chauncey.
Yes, good evening to the board. Thank you very much for letting me have an opportunity to speak here. I'll keep it short here. I've got 3 comments here. I could talk all night about drive-through restaurants, but I believe you have received,
not tonight.
I believe you have received comments on some aspects that I would have argued all night. So the first one I'd like to know is, question is, I understand that the planning board is going to continue their open hearings here. I think this adds to the fact that this whole process is being rushed. Here you are asking us to take a look at further amendments on June 7th or whatever, and the town meeting is June 12th. How do you expect the townspeople to take a look in the 5 days, make comments, and then have another public meeting so you can discuss these things? So I just think the whole process is way too rushed, and you have not allowed people to make adequate comments in a short period of time. I believe that under the amendment here, you have section 894, item 8, concerning wait times. He's describing a separate section if you have exceeded a certain amount of time. That happened to be 5 minutes. The planning board stuck in 5 minutes. 5 minutes is also coincidental with the state anti-idling law, chapter 90, section 16A, which prohibits, well, not prohibits, will impose a fine of $100 on the first offense for any vehicle idling in excess of 5 minutes. Now, I think the planning board has alluded to some changes in some locales here. I think maybe you haven't seen this article and the patch here that Wellesley, the chief of police, has instituted a $15 fine for the first offense for excess idling. $15 the first offense, whereas in the Commonwealth imposes $100 for the first offense. I won't get into the pollution. I also want to mention the back in the May 3rd or the May 5th zoning board meeting, vote 4-1. They did not approve of this amendment. Here we have 2 zoning boards which are in direct conflict with each other. So I'd like the public to consider the zoning board, and I'd like to offer my condolences to the Herman family there. The zoning board did not approve of this amendment. The last comment I have is the planning board keeps mentioning the business aspect of this amendment, and they feel that this will drive additional business. I did a quick back of the envelope calculation. I just want to put this whole subject in context. If we have just one drive-through facility, and according to the zoning board, there are only possible 2 facilities available on the 110 stretch. If I just take a look at one facility, McDonald's, assuming, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, so people can chime in and say, hey, I'm full of beans and bad manners. But if they can fulfill an order within 5 minutes, so a 5-minute order in 1 hour gives you 12 orders they can do. So the amendment says that they would be allowed to be open from 5:30 to 10 o'clock. That's 16 hours, a 16-hour day. You just do the math, and that comes up to 192 orders per day. Multiply that times 365, take an average order value of $8 per order, $16. I come up with, in the 1 year, $1,121,000. Okay, the town's tax rate is only 0.75%. We're talking about $8,400 in tax revenue to the town. Only $8,400. Multiply that by 2 for the 2 possible sites. You're talking about $16,000. The town can easily save $16,000 someplace else. I wanted to get back to another point that I forgot to mention about the wait area for the queues. The planning board had said, hey, they're going to set aside a separate waiting area. If you go through the time, just a simple time analysis, I don't see any difference between drive-through with the separate waiting area and curbside pickup. You go through step by step in ordering, driving to the restaurant, picking up your order or paying for your order, picking it up. I can't see a difference between a drive-through and curbside. Curbside, I think, is more convenient to those folks with the small kids, the disadvantaged, the disabilities. All they have to do is just sit there, push a few buttons on whatever phone they have, and somebody will come out and deliver their food. The planning board has also mentioned, I'm sorry.
Chauncey, I've got other people who are waiting to speak. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please.
Okay, the main point I want to make is we're talking about $16,000 in additional revenues. I'm not even talking about the effect of the supply chain of those operations. I don't even think there is a supplier in Westford that would meet the, or is part of the drive-through restaurant business. Most of those supplies are probably purchased way out of town. Anyways, hey, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chauncey. Okay, Sue Thomas has submitted a question. She asks, can a drive-through restaurant also hold a liquor license? Jeff or Bob?
Our plan was not for drive-through liquor. So I'm going to say no. I got one response on the survey today that asked about drive-through gun shops. And again, I say no. That is not within the scope of what we're talking about for this kind of a business.
Okay. Jeff, can I ask you to weigh in also from the zoning perspective?
Sure. I might suggest they might be separate issues. So while the planning board might have purview of the drive-through itself, I would imagine that the licensing authority relative to alcohol, they might have some say about that. It might be 2 different purviews. Not certain.
Okay.
I also don't believe Massachusetts allows drive-through alcohol pickup. I'm not sure any states allow that anymore. It used to be allowed 30 years ago.
Okay. Mike Berlinski has asked, when was or will be the second forum on drive-throughs? Will June 7th be a second or third forum? So I think what Mike is asking is when are the public forums going to be on this?
The public forums, we had the first one on the 6th of May, and that one is available for replay either through Westford Cat or YouTube. The second one is scheduled for tomorrow night, and unfortunately there was a posting error on the town website. We've got to get that posted correctly tomorrow. You can get the webinar information if you attend tomorrow night's advertised EDC meeting. But we need to get the same information replicated as part of the second information forum. It's going to be 7 p.m. tomorrow night.
So the second one is 7 p.m. tomorrow night?
Yes. And I want to emphasize the forum is not the same as the public hearing. The public hearing is the planning board public hearing required by law, and that will be 7:30 p.m. on the 7th of June.
Okay. And then Sue Thomas again, with another question, has the EDC studied the number of businesses they expect to attract or retain in town with this accommodation, and what were the results? Or what are we gaining?
So is Bruce Rosenberg available to come online?
Yes, he
Can you
is.
see him?
Yes,
If you
I
could
can.
open his mic. Let's open his mic.
Okay, I'll ask Eric to open his mic.
Hey, while we wait, I just want to respond to one of the analyses that Chauncey did. I want to explain my background. I have a master's in statistics, and I was an avid student of the John Kleinrock queuing theory models. And it's not just 12 customers per hour for a McDonald's. It is a 5-minute average waiting time, but during those 5 minutes, you could have as many as maybe 10 or 15 customers order and proceed up in the queue. So you have to look at the number per hour is far in excess of 12 per hour in a standard McDonald's queue. So the 16,000 is a long, a very short underestimate.
Well, I think we also all need to bear in mind that if this is being proposed not simply for tax revenue purposes.
That's correct. It's business opportunity and what we call the halo effect.
Well,
So
it's not only just, excuse me, it's not only just business opportunities. The folks who have proposed this are also folks who are looking at it from a perspective of having young children, from the perspective of the disability community as well. So I think we do need to bear in mind as we talk about this that it is broader than just the business community, and it is broader than just a tax basis, that, you know, other folks and other interests are involved here. Okay, Bruce, the question was that Bob was deferring to you about was, has the EDC studied the number of businesses they expect to attract or retain in town with this accommodation, and what are we gaining?
Well, thank you, Andrea, Ms. Chairperson. There's a multifaceted answer to that, and I don't want to take a lot of time. So first, as Bob has mentioned, the planning board has set a limit of 6 potential special permits, assuming all conditions are met. So that's obviously sets the grand limit. At this juncture, what the EDC has done is engaged some potential individuals who might be willing to have a restaurant here, an example of which, for example, would be Orchard Square, that standalone bank that would be a perfect venue for a drive-through restaurant. But I guess the quick answer is no, I do not have any hardcore analytical data, although in response to Mr. Chu's question, we do have some information from local McDonald's that we probably would speak about tomorrow night at the town forum, that in terms of, if you want to talk about effects, not just revenues to the town, it's our understanding that that restaurant, and I think you probably have received this note, they were forced to shutter for some 3 months, some 68,000 plus meals that they could not serve, and perhaps the more detrimental effect was an impact to some 35 employees. So it's not always a question of what tax revenues come to the town. It's also a question of what impacts it has to residents and so on. So I think that's about the best I can answer. Most of the information we're going to talk about tomorrow night is indeed anecdotal. Westford has never allowed drive-through restaurants, so I cannot give you a gradient, a first derivative or second derivative as to what would happen or what did happen before or after drive-through. So that's kind of my answer, and I hope Andrea that's sufficient for now.
Absolutely. Okay. Not seeing any more questions. I think just to remind everybody, the public forum is tomorrow night, being sponsored by the EDC at, Bruce, what time?
It's 7 o'clock. I think it's a combination of Bob Schaffer, myself, and Tom Barry and Ron Caterino as panelists. Okay, so for anybody who wants to tune in to the public forum, the second public forum on drive-through restaurants, it is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. being sponsored by the EDC. The board isn't going to take a vote tonight or a position. We will wait to hear from the planning board in 2 weeks as to what their vote is and what their position is, and we will then act after them. So thank you all. Thank you, Bruce and Bob. Appreciate it. I know we still have a couple of more zoning articles to get through. And the next one is Article 22, which is
Andrea.
Yeah.
Could I just ask one thing? People can see the tomorrow's forum if they can't make it tomorrow night. It should be available on YouTube and Westford Cat by next Monday or Tuesday. And I really urge all residents who have not participated, please let your voice be heard. Go to the town website and participate in our survey.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're at Article 22, which is a citizen's petition to amend Section 9.5.1 of the zoning bylaw to not allow a proposed zoning bylaw change to return to town meeting for 2 years after an unfavorable vote. And I think that this is Chauncey's is the sponsor of this petition. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay, so you have the floor again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and the board. Good evening again. I can make this much shorter than my prior statements here. My amendment is straightforward. The town meeting is the last and probably the best example of a true democracy. Everybody can speak up and be heard. And so I would like to preserve that right by making sure that any town meeting zoning bylaws are maintained for at least 2 years. I really am frustrated that I'm at a disadvantage here because my amendment here has to be approved by the planning board, the very board that I am speaking up against. I think it's really puts me at a disadvantage to present an argument here against the planning board. But anyways, there was a couple of comments. There were a couple of comments that from a couple citizens here that thought the removal of the planning board's ability to bring up a subject again would be too restrictive. And my answer to that is there has been case law, Kitty versus Springfield, 343, Massachusetts, page 321. Case law where the city council in a town took a second look at a zoning bylaw that was changed by the town meeting. So it's possible that the citizen concerned that there would be no control over such an amendment can be, it's been overturned at least in one case there. So I'm open to any questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, before I ask for questions from the board, Jeff, can you tell us what the planning board's recommendation was from last night?
I can. The planning board voted 5-0-0 to not recommend this article to town meeting. And I just want to clarify one thing. This amendment does not require planning board approval. The planning board is merely obligated to provide their recommendation, favorable or otherwise, to town meeting. It doesn't change the vote required.
Right, and ultimately it's up to town meeting whether they decide to accept this or not. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, I don't see any. Oh, Scott, yep. And then Tom.
I get Chauncey's point that you're up to approve or not approve meeting, then it gets undone in 6 months to a year. So I hear that, but it's also the case sometimes we have articles come up that we find a minor detail needs to get fixed to come back at a following meeting to deal with it. Shut down the ability to fix a mistake in an article for 2 years. So I'm inclined to not support while being sympathetic to, I think, the rationale for doing it.
I pointed out, though, there's been case law that the select board could jump in and take a second look right away.
Okay, Tom?
It just seems like we're adding an additional restriction on the democratic process here that I guess I would rather see something come back for debate than decide that basically the process that we have for town meeting was going to hit a requirement or a hurdle that would prevent that.
John?
Yeah, I agree with Scott and Tom. I don't think this is necessary. I think it's up to the annual town meeting to take the action.
Yeah, I agree with all of you as well. Is there a motion?
I'll move. Go ahead,
Tom.
Scott.
Somebody.
Tom. Right? Tom is to say.
I was going to move. I was going to move to not recommend.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. And all those in favor, Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so 5-0 to not recommend. Thank you, Chauncey, for bringing this up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, and then the final article that we're dealing with tonight is Article 23, which is to amend the zoning bylaw to expand the zoning overlay district map for senior residential multifamily overlay districts. Jeff, do you want to speak to this, or should Scott Clark speak to this? I think I want to start with you to talk about it from the zoning perspectives, and then we can hear from Mr. Clark with respect to the at least the proposal for now.
Of course, thank you. So as you may recall, there's one prior development that's in the senior residential multifamily overlay district. That's the Stone Ridge development. And so our bylaw allows for adding parcels through town meeting process to these overlay district, and that would allow for higher density development, provided that certain criteria are met. It would allow for at least one of the occupants / owners would have to be age 55 or older. It would require that 10% of the units be affordable in perpetuity. It does require a sizable buffer around the perimeter of the property, 100 foot. And so in this case, it's really a two-part process. Not only is it a zoning bylaw amendment, but right now the planning board just concluded their public hearing to review the conceptual plan. So this is all very high level. And last night, the planning board did close their hearing and vote unanimous, 4-1-0, Kate Hollister opposed, to recommend this article to town meeting. I believe we did share with you some of Ms. Hollister's comments and some of the thoughts from the members of the board that did approve it. They thought that it was consistent with the zoning bylaw. It did provide housing stock for our aging population. It did provide the required affordable housing component. It may resolve some ongoing safety issues at the Merrill's Quarry and possibly prevent some future tragedies. It would provide opportunity for the public to safely access and appreciate some of the site's scenic features. It can also add to an extensive trail system nearby and provide connectivity to some of the also nearby trail systems. And it also provides a recreational area an opportunity for use by the school and or the public. So those are some of the reasons why they voted in favor of it. And I know the applicant is here tonight to speak to that, and I suspect there are some neighbors as well.
Hang on 1 minute, please. I do have a question for you, Jeff. Just this is a process question and also a zoning question. So, is the project that is being planned, or at least talked about, proposed, tied to the determination or the possible determination by town meeting of this as a senior residential multi-lay overlay district? And I guess my concern is if we do that, and if town meeting were to designate this as a senior, overlay district, does that mean that this is the project, at least as conceptually planned, that must go on in that area? Or does it mean that we've now designated that as the overlay district? If for some reason this proposal doesn't bear fruit, does that mean somebody else can now come in and make a new proposal for the overlay district, or do we have to start with the overlay district all over again? Do you understand my question? I'm trying to figure out if the two are tied together.
So I believe town meeting, so if the parcels are added to the overlay district, once added, unless town meeting takes another action to remove it, it stays in the overlay district.
Okay.
Now, town meeting, like the planning board, they are to sort of opine and base their decision to support the article or not based on the conceptual plan that they see. Is the conceptual plan, if approved, what would get built? No, of course not, because it would still be shaped by another public hearing process, a site plan review, but not exactly just site plan review. It's not a full discretionary permit process, but there are additional findings and guidelines provided in the zoning bylaw that they would have to, the planning board would have to find that they are consistent with the design guidelines and requirements. So there's still opportunity to shape it. They don't have benefit yet of a detailed on the ground field survey. And who knows, after they do preliminary testing, what they may find in terms of ledge, stone. They may have to downsize based on, physical constraints. So there's a lot of variables, but I do think once added, it stays in the overlay district.
Okay. All right. Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us tonight. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrea. Hey, Andrea, I actually have Katie Enright, who is from Howard Stein Hudson. She is the site engineer on this project, and she is going to do the sort of overview of this project. So she'll be able to speak to the finer points. So I'm actually going to hand it over to Katie. So if she's not otherwise unmuted, if you could unmute her.
I think she's unmuted now.
I know she's here.
No, I can see that she's here, and her microphone looks green to me, so she should be unmuted.
My guess is that she's trying to.
Eric, can you see her?
Yeah, it looks like she's having some microphone issues on her end.
Okay.
Well, if need be, I can speak somewhat extemporaneously until she figures it out.
Okay, why don't you start, and hopefully she'll be able to figure it out and can join us.
Okay. Yeah, she just texted me. She's signing out. I'm going to try to sign back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I had to switch my microphone for some reason. Apologize in advance. I'm sorry, I have a horrible cold. So, but I will, again, Katie Enright with Howard Stein Hudson. Thanks, Scott. Sorry about that. Tonight with Clark Property Development, obviously Scott Clark, whom you know, and Farrell and Robbins, attorney Melissa Robbins will be representing this project also. If you go to the next slide, I'm just going to give you a really quick overview. This is the presentation we gave the planning board last evening. This is just an aerial view of the site. So to the left of the page is Tingsboro Road. All the way to the right of the page is Caldwell. And then to the bottom of the page, you have Vineyard and Tyler Roads. And you see the quarry itself right in the middle of the page there. Yep. So as we move to the next slide, this is just one of the beautiful pictures we took on one of our site walks of the quarry itself. If some of you have been up there, it's quite beautiful. There's a lot of natural landscape around the quarry. There's also a significant amount of graffiti up there. And the project really plans to celebrate the quarry itself. Scott is really enthusiastic about the quarry hole and really celebrating that and making that the centerpiece of this project. So if we move to the next slide. As Jeff stated, this is the conceptual plan. So far, we've only utilized existing information that's available for the property. So your town GIS mapping, aerial photography, and we've attended a few different site walks and walked the property to look at and kind of feel the landscape and feel the different aspects of the site and how we would want to develop the site. There is a lot of logistical things that we had to look at too that's already within the senior residential multifamily overlay district, which Melissa refers to as the senior mod in short, just to kind of help us get through that. There is in the bylaw a 100-foot buffer around the exterior of the property that's required. So all of these structures are positioned more than 100 feet away from the exterior property line, except for where we need to break into that for access. So you can see our access coming off of Tingsboro Road, where the lot is quite thin. And then that first unit there is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone around the exterior of the property. The units are also shown in blocks of essentially 1 through 4, and the buildings themselves have to be 40 feet apart from one another. The concept plan right now is showing 95 units, and as Jeff stated, this is early in the conceptual process. 95 units is essentially the density allowed under the senior mod bylaw. So we're looking at 2 units an acre at 40,000 square feet an acre under the bylaw. The lot itself is just under 45 acres and is created with 2 parcels. So the math ends up being, once you change it out to 40,000 square feet per acre, about 95 units. So what we're doing here is 95 units. Again, this is the maximum that would be allowed on this site based on the senior mod bylaw. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the design process. So far, the site is ever changing. The front of the site is very much the access to the quarry. There is a plateau area where you can see exposed ledge as you come up, and there's a cart path now that extends around the entire quarry. There's also trail systems that extend throughout the property. And it's important for us to utilize some of the trail systems that exist there today and provide connectivity to the conservation area that's located off of Caldwell Road to the east side of this plan. It's also important for us to utilize some of the existing sort of infrastructure that's out there today. So we looked a lot at the cart paths and kind of the tree lines that are out there today and tried to mimic where we placed our road around the quarry itself. As you extend towards Caldwell Road and down towards Rita Miller School, those areas are substantially different than in and around the quarry. They're treed, some quite large trees, and you can tell there's additional soil in that area. So what we're looking at doing down by Rita Miller is we're thinking about a location for our wastewater treatment facility, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to provide a playing field for the Rita Miller School. So we've reached out and have some feedback from the superintendent of schools saying that would be generally they'd be in favor of something to that effect. So as we move through some of the other aspects of what we're looking to do, I mean, really what we're looking to do is find a safe way for the people in the town of Westford to enjoy the quarry, provide safety in the fact that we'll have these over 55 residences now positioned around the quarry, provide walking paths and passive recreational areas through the wooded areas, a playing field, et cetera. And we look forward to really kind of drilling down on the wetland resource areas. That's would be our next phase. If we pass town meeting, full field survey, and then kind of really looking at the type of units we want to put out here. Right now, we're thinking between 1,600 and 2,400 square feet. I believe if you go to the next slide, Eric. These are just some examples of Scott's other project, and these aren't the units we're going to be doing here. We're going to be doing smaller units here, but this is just kind of an architectural styling of the type of work that Scott does that would kind of transform to this location. And then just to move through the slides, you can keep going, Eric. It's just another building to the next one. This is just an overview of blasting. A lot of the concern, as you can imagine, with the abutters has been with blasting. We've had an initial online meeting, virtual meeting. We reached out to all of the abutters and had a virtual online meeting with them. They've actually organized, and the Brunos who live next door are actually kind of the head of the abutter group, and we're working with them on some comments. We actually have Main Drilling and Blasting coming to do a public information meeting on Thursday evening with the abutters, just to talk about kind of just the rules and regulations that are out there that exist today, and just kind of have a little bit of education about in and around blasting as we move forward. And certainly as we move forward, we understand that there will be blasting out here. We will have to play by the rules. We are looking to be a good partner and a good neighbor to the abutters that exist out there today. So we'll be following all of the rules and regulations as we move forward. The next slide relates to the affordability. I know Jeff touched on this, but this is part of the senior mod bylaws that 5% of the units shall be affordable to families low income, 5% to families qualifying as moderate income, and 5% qualifying as median income. So 10% of the project would be considered affordable, with 15% of the project being essentially their pricing structures being determined with this math in place. And this is part of the senior mod also. So we move to the next slide. This just talks a little bit about the sizing of the units. We do not have an architect on board quite yet. But what Scott's looking at is doing a 1,600 to 2,400 square foot unit. All of them will be 2-bedroom, except for 10% are allowed to be 3 bedrooms. And this is again per the bylaws. The units are going to be a lot smaller than the project that Scott is currently doing in Westford. And therefore the pricing will be less than the project that Scott is working on currently in Westford. And depending on the site constraints that we find as we move through the project, it's really going to determine whether the units are singles, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, et cetera, as we move forward. And so we'll be able to determine better the size of those units and the placement as we get more information. The next slide, Eric, is a little bit of information regarding some of the back and forth we've had with the abutters and some of the initial concerns that we've heard. Certainly blasting is definitely the largest concern. So 24, these are some of the things that we've agreed to date, which is 24-hour notice prior to any blasting. As we work through site plan review, we would be creating a blasting plan. And then there will be special permit conditions regarding blasting. Other concerns are related to particulate and sound. Certainly we want to make sure that buffer areas are left in place where possible. So where we don't require waivers, where we do not require waivers of the 100-foot buffer, we'll be leaving an existing tree line throughout the project. There is some information or some requests where their slag piles exist on the property line. Some of the abutters are really interested in leaving those slag piles there. Others are looking to have them removed. So we want to certainly keep cooperating with the abutters as to whether or not they feel like those slag piles should be there or not, and also look to the structural integrity of those piles too and make sure that it's safe to do so. Regarding sound, certainly we're concerned about sound, and we're looking at ways, once we develop this blasting plan, we will be looking at ways to make sure that we buffer against the abutters against sound. And looking at different mitigation measures depending on where we do need to blast throughout the property. And also, and especially working with the Rita Miller School also, and making sure that any of our blasting activities or construction activities are not affecting day-to-day school operations. We do also have an emergency exit that's an existing easement that goes through the Bruno's property that you probably saw on the plan. This is an existing easement for emergency use, and it would be for emergency use only. There would be no construction vehicles or regular traffic coming in and out of there, nor pedestrian use. It would just be used for an emergency exit only. Regarding open space, what we've tried to do in the conceptual plan is really look to continue the existing open space that exists off of Caldwell and really kind of celebrate that connection, include some trails that bring us between those two properties, and also connect people to the quarry itself so that people can continue to visit. We would be looking in the future at doing some parking on site also that would be public, so that the trails could be used by the public. And then regarding green building practices, some of the commentary we heard from the planning board was definitely that we want to look to the Green Energy and Sustainability Committee to talk about ways that we can, things that we can do within the architecture and building systems and the site to essentially bring some of those best practices into the development so that we can create a smaller carbon footprint and certainly a more green community. And then I think the next slide, Eric, is just the conceptual plan again. I know your time is valuable. I didn't want to get into it in too great a detail, but I am here tonight, and so is Scott, to answer questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions from the board? John? Hey, Eric, can you take the aerial down now so that the folks that are now like little, thank you, now I can see everybody again.
Yeah,
John, go ahead.
I was unable to access Kate Hollister's comments. Could somebody summarize those for me?
Jeff, do you want to do that? But you have to unmute yourself.
I need just a moment, but I'd be happy to do that. So, excuse me, 1 second. So I think Kate summarized some of her greatest concerns. It was truly about providing a greater level of affordability, not just affordability that meets a certain area median income, but she thought for seniors who were looking to downsize that they wanted truly, modest spaces and modest home prices, certainly closer to more of the $400,000-$500,000 range rather than some of the luxury homes that have come into place in the recent years. I certainly applaud, her motives. I just don't see that the bylaw requires that as part of this process. She thinks, let's see. She's concerned that it will result in a lot of luxury homes. I know to address that, she had asked for an area range of the potential units. I think the applicant did come back with an area range of perhaps, was it 1,600 to a little over 2,000, 2,400 square feet?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, well, I can kind of sympathize with Kate's comments because I've heard that before. There are people that would like to downsize and would like to stay in Westford, but then they say that if they do downsize, they pay the same for the new places they did for the old, or they just can't make it work financially. So that is a concern. I like the overall project, though. I think it's a good use of the area.
If I could take just a moment, the project that I'm doing down on Carlisle Road, has it's an interesting thing because what I have found there, it's a much smaller project, and the single family homes have become much more. I get much greater interest, and when I get that interest, people are wanting to actually add a lot of upgrades and to actually make it more premium than I had really quite honestly envisioned. This project, just as a practical matter, just in terms of sheer numbers, is about 5 times the size of the Carlisle Road, and it's in a very of my Carlisle Road project, and it's in a very different part of town. It's by the very nature of it, I think it's safe to assume that it's not going to be a repeat of what I'm doing. But, because first off, there will be triplexes and fourplexes and many more duplexes. So I think, the combination of the sheer numbers of units to sell, the sizes, the types of units, and the location being a little further out from the center of town, that sort of dictates that it will have a different price point. Truthfully, there are so many moving parts in the world of construction costs and what's going to be the market 2 years from now is almost all but impossible for me to predict. I can project, but I can't, fully predict. And so, but as a, my point being though, is as a practical matter, it will be a lower price point. I know it will be. I can't commit to anything at, here on, May of 2021.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeff and then Anita.
Thank you. One other point that Kate raised is that if successful at town meeting, it would then be followed up with another public hearing process with the planning board and certainly the Conservation Commission, but it would be a site plan review process. So a site plan review merely requires a majority vote, 3 out of 5 planning board members, and there's not the same level of discretion and opportunity to impose special conditions of approval as you would with, say, a special permit process. But nonetheless, that is the process that's outlined in the zoning bylaw.
Okay. Anita?
Yeah, I actually shared some similar thoughts to Kate's dissenting vote related to the affordability for the target population, kind of understanding of like our seniors in town who want to stay in town who might not be able to afford that. And so that was just an interesting, it was just interesting to read Kate's email. And especially when we have other agenda items of housing developments later that can allot much higher units to affordable housing. I'm like, wow, there's definitely an opportunity here, but I understand that it's not in violation of any kind of like bylaw that we have. But one question that I did have unrelated to that is the fire department's observations or comments related to the development plans, and that was around the single entry way for emergency. And I just didn't know if that was something that you'd be able to address. I don't think it was in that presentation that you just went over, so I don't know if you've had a chance to address that or their concerns.
Yes, if I may, Ms. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So we do have an emergency access, which is our secondary means of access on the plan, and the fire department has reviewed that, and we're going to be supplying them with the information relative to the size and width and construction of that area so that there is a secondary means of access to the site. And certainly it is so early in the process that we will be, continuing to work with the abutters and abutting properties. And if, certainly if another option exists out there, that's something that we can look into. And then just to kind of circle back on the affordability, I think what Scott didn't say is that it's not that we don't know that the prices won't be median. The problem is we don't actually know how many units we can get out here. And so it's really hard to set a pricing structure when we could go out, finish our wetland surveys, finish our field surveys, and do our soils and find out we could only get a septic system out there for 45 units. The pricing of 45 units is going to be certainly much different than the pricing at 90 units. So the pricing structure is kind of going to start to fall out of what we can do on the site. Certainly there are costs that go into, just developing the site itself, gaining access to the site and the engineering that needs to be done and the work that needs to be done on site to make it developable. And so we're going to be sorting through that. And it's not that we just can't throw a number at it right now, because we truly 95 is the highest number that we can get out there, but we're really not sure where we're going to end up at the end of the day. And that's going to drive the pricing structure to make sure that at the end of the day that the project can sustain itself.
So I think I certainly understand, 1 minute and then Tom, I certainly understand that you can't give us a number today and don't expect you to be able to do that given the fact that you're looking at not starting construction for 2 years. But I think you need to bear in mind and hear what the board is saying to you tonight and what you've heard from other folks, which is that you need to keep pricing in mind when you start to construct this, and understand that, you know, we're looking to price this to reach a group of people who have not in the past been able to downsize and afford such units. So I think that's all we're saying to you right now, is that please hear our concerns and keep them in mind. Tom?
Just along with some comments already made, you know, we have a long-term interest, or many of, you know, I think the town in general has a long-term interest in gaining more affordability in a bunch of ways and a pathway for seniors to remain here in town. I feel like the main question here, to your earlier point, Andrea, is do we support moving this into the overlay district? And I think that has a lot of benefits. And I think the market will, you know, determine through the remainder of the process sort of, you know, how within the boundaries of the bylaw we can make the most out of it, both for, you know, a reasonable return and to be able to have the best affordability. So because this does, you know, give the best, compared to other uses for the property, this gives the best pathway to affordability and seniors remaining in place. I think it's a good approach.
Scott?
So I guess my concern is we're having town meeting get into the business of being the planning board, and they lack the knowledge base of the planning board. So, but Jeff, I don't remember when we did Stone Ridge, was that the same kind of concept that we had a plan along with the overlay district?
That's my understanding. Yes, they had to first create the bylaw to allow for the overlay district. Town meeting had to add parcels to the overlay district. And I believe there was a conceptual plan that went to that town meeting. It was simply followed up by site plan review with the planning board afterwards.
Since I was part of the planning board when Stone Ridge came before town meeting, that is what happened, is that there was a conceptual plan that was presented to town meeting. Scott, it was presented as a conceptual plan, and with the constant comments being made that the planning board would be holding public hearings and the planning board would be following up on it, but it was done that way.
But it seems we're talking a lot about affordability being a concern for, you know, all five of us, and yet, as I understand it, if we follow this process, that's not, you know, it's a three out of 5 votes opposed to 4 to 5 votes, so that could be ignored. I'm not accusing anyone of ignoring us, but I mean, the fact of the matter is we can opine, but there's no real force behind that if we have a streamlined process to the planning board, right?
Andrea, do you want me to try to answer?
Jeff, that's yours.
Okay. So right now, I mean, you're tired of hearing me say this, but the bylaw does require an affordable component. And right now, it simply requires, as Katie mentioned, 5% be affordable at I think a low affordability, and another 5% at a moderate affordability, and then another 5% is just at the median income. So it's not considered affordable, but it can't be priced above what the median income is. So only 10% of the units would be affordable. That's what the bylaw says. So if you want to require more, I don't have good advice for you on how to do that as part of this process.
Except to amend the bylaw at a later date.
Which is a separate
issue, not for tonight.
Right.
I guess, you know, Tom, I agree with you that I think this is a good use for this property, and I think while I separate out the conceptual plan from the zoning and the overlay district, I think having this as an overlay district is a good use of the land. I've certainly got concerns about your conceptual plan, but I think I will leave that for the planning board along with my input when it gets there. But I will tell you that one of the big issues over at Stone Ridge was the secondary and the emergency access, and we absolutely demanded that there be a secondary emergency access, and it had to be a real access, okay, and not, you know, some easement through a neighbor's driveway. So I will tell you, you better look at that. The other thing I will also say is I am sure for the residents, for the planning board, and for this board as well, blasting is going to be a really big issue. We have had serious problems with blasting in this town in the past, and we're still paying the price and the consequences for that blasting. So everybody, I will tell you, is going to be all over you about blasting and the plan that you put in place, and the contractor that you use for the blasting. So with that, there are a couple of comments that I just want to get to. Nancy Cook, who is chair of the Council on Aging and a member of the Housing Authority, says that the ability that this article gives us to add affordable housing units for our aging residents is important, and she would urge us to support this article. Sue Thomas has a question. Why are we building multi-level housing for seniors? And also, she's got her recycling hat on and says, please add space for recycling and on-site composting in addition to trash removal. So Jeff and Scott and Katie, why don't you add that to your list of things to be followed up on? Tim Mulhern writes, were the abutters' concerns and mitigation points included in the packets for the members of the board? Yes, the answer to that question is yes, we did get that in our packets. And then Sue Thomas writes again that she looks forward to working with the developers as a member of our CES committee, which is our climate, and I can never remember the exact title, but our climate and energy and sustainability committee.
Clean energy.
Clean energy, right. And so those are all the comments we have, unless anybody from the board has any further comments. I think, Jeff, you told us that the planning board supported this 4-1, right?
That's correct, Andrea, but they also had some recommendations as well.
Right.
So the first is, as you see in your packet, the applicant did offer some considerations to try to address, be responsive to some of the concerns to date. So they offered that in their presentation that I believe was included in your packet. And so the planning board simply incorporated that by reference. And then secondly is, with all overlay districts these days, the Attorney General's office is demanding to have such districts shown graphically on the zoning map. So the planning board respectfully requests, and the applicant object, that any motion would include the thought to add it, that it be shown graphically on the zoning map. So.
Okay. So is there a motion?
I will move to recommend.
Second.
With Jeff's friendly addition about adding the overlay district graphically to our zoning map?
Agreed.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
So, I mean, I support the development of the area, but I do have the same concerns kind of as what we've discussed here and with Kate. And although, I mean, I support the planning board's votes, but I do think we have a different perspective, you know, obviously that we're kind of bringing to the table. So I'm going to vote no.
And I'll vote aye. So again, it's 4-1 to support. All right, Jeff and Scott and Katie, thank you all very much. We'll see you at town meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Moving right along, we've got old and new business. So our first item is to consider waiving a portion of town wastewater charges and pending decision approve a purchase and sale agreement with Choice Inc. and SCG. Jody, is this you? Go ahead.
So we were able to negotiate a successful purchase and sale with Choice. I'm not even sure if you're not prepared to decide tonight about the fee waiving, unless that's something you do want to decide tonight. The proponent said they just wanted the board to understand that they're hopeful that you're going to consider that. So I waited for them to give me a number or where they were thinking, and I don't think they want to propose that. So we did give you a lot of data on what you have done in the future. If you would like to delve into that tonight, you can. If not, I think you could vote to approve the purchase and sale with some commitment to consider that in the future. So that's up to you.
It's the pleasure of the board.
So I would not want to vote on a waiving of a fee till we know what the fee would look like. I mean, I can't guess to a cost we don't know the cost of exactly, but I think we want the purchase and sale to move forward. I mean, this is a good plan with a good developer. Tie into the school system, because as we look at Stony Brook, you get a more constant flow that way. It's a good thing. So I'm inclined to say I would make a motion to support the purchase and sale.
And to leave the fee decision for another day?
Yes.
Oh, is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Jody,
Jody, go ahead.
I think it would be important to know if the board is open to considering something as part of this so we can move forward, unless you're just not prepared to do that. Scott.
I mean, we just deliberated long and hard about affordability with the prior project. Here's one that actually gives us 55 units, of which I think 30 are truly affordable. I think 5 are market. It's a very small share of market rate versus affordables. So I think our mouth is and make us a financing work. So my inclination is to do something to make those fees lower. Yes.
Okay.
I just don't want to define what the number is until I know what the cost is.
We did put information in your packets showing what you did for Stony Brook. I don't know if you.
But is that a firm number for this case?
Steve Cronin is in the background here. Steve, if you want to come on and speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the numbers that we presented to you in the memo are the actual numbers that the Stony Brook Housing is paying with respect to the Stony Brook wastewater treatment plant. You know, the numbers we presented for the Blanchard wastewater plant are based on theoretical flows. You know, that's similar to how we calculated the flows for Stony Brook. You know, what we tried to do was give you a comparison and compare apples to apples, essentially, on how that methodology of charging the fee would be applied equally to the property at 55 Town Farm. So, you know, in my opinion, it's relatively similar to what we did for Stony Brook. You know, it doesn't get us to, you know, a full funding of the facility, obviously, because a portion of that is fed by town properties, but this would be equitable to what we had done in the past.
Okay, I guess I don't know how to make a motion. I mean, certainly I would favor the purchase and sale agreement, and I would agree to, I guess, the fee structure as Stony Brook. Is it the best we can do?
Or consistent with what we did at Stony Brook?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the motion to approve the purchase and sale and to consider this stormwater fee.
Wastewater.
Wastewater. I have stormwater on the brain. Wastewater fee consistent with the methodology we followed at Stony Brook.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Steve. Okay. Next is a request from the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments for a letter of support designating the Greater Lowell region as the Northern Middlesex Economic Development District by the Economic Development Administration. Anita?
I just had a comment that I noticed in the letter. There's a date that's missing. It's like May X something. I just wanted to make sure that that was caught before it gets sent over.
Thanks. Okay. Is there a motion to support?
So moved.
Second. Okay. All those in favor? Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have a request from the Economic Development Committee to appoint Cheryl Serpy as an alternate member for a term expiring on June 30th, 2021. So we're only appointing her for a month. Is that right, Jody?
All right. I asked Bruce Rosenberg about this, and this is how he wants to proceed. So, yes. And okay. I think we have, the thing is, we have two members that are getting off the board. And so I think he wants to have more appointments after that occurs, after June 30th.
Okay. Is there a motion to appoint?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any board reports or updates? Seeing none. Okay, town manager's report. Jody.
So in your packet, I gave you information about the state's newest holiday, Juneteenth. And I did give you some data of what other towns are doing. This year it falls on Saturday, but that does impact our library workers. So we really need direction from you whether you are going to honor this state holiday. And I also gave you a spreadsheet of what the cost impact would be to the town.
Any discussion? Or motion? Oh, John, and then Scott.
I think I would support the Juneteenth as a holiday.
Definitely. Scott?
I agree. It's a state holiday. You know, staff deserves to get a paid holiday if it's a state holiday. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there, okay. All those in favor? Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I have a request to authorize the school superintendent to submit a statement of interest to the Mass School Building Authority for a roof replacement at the Blanchard Middle School.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Scott?
Just I would like to, I saw the comments about, solar panels. I know from experience, the state approves some things and not other things. So when we make application, can we be explicit about asking for the state to fund that?
Jody?
I don't know if Anita wants to go first.
I thought you were going to answer Scott's question.
Well, so I don't know if Paul Fox is in the background, but my understanding is the MSBA will not pay for solar panels. So
Paul is, and Paul is in the background, so he can perhaps chime in.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I'm unmuted. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, now we can.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Jody is correct with that statement, and I did verify it. I looked into some recent information with the MSBA, but as of right now, they still encourage the funding to come through any of the other environmental companies or through National Grid to support those incentives. However, as part of the project, we can still choose to do solar on the roof. We'll just be fully responsible for those costs associated with the project.
Okay. Anita, did you have a comment?
No, I was listening on the school committee meeting last night, so I was going to answer Scott's question, but obviously Paul's here, so I don't need to speak for him. So thank you.
All right. John?
I had a question for Paul. Paul, how large an area is this? It's a flat roof, am I correct?
Yes, that is correct. It's a large roof and it is a pretty substantial area. I believe that it was right around 70,000 square feet, with the building itself being a little bit larger than that.
So there's probably no consideration of trying to put a sloped roof on there, like a raised seam metal roof or something like that.
I'm going to let that decision be ultimately up to the designer of the roof, but I'm going to anticipate that it's going to be replaced as a flat roof at this moment in time.
Okay.
Jody?
Yeah, we will have both Permanent Town Building Committee and the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee heavily involved in this project. So
that's good.
Good. And I think, for now, I think we should, keep all of that in mind. But for now, mindful that we have a June 1st deadline to get this application in. Is there, I think we have the motion and the second already. So all those in favor, John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
Aye.
So then I wanted to speak about the town's operations in light of the governor's recent actions. And we've met about this. We would like to go a little slow in town. And so we are going to require masks in town buildings, at least for now, and hope that the public does support us on that. We're just trying to keep everybody safe and keep town operations going. And town meeting, we put out recommendations with the Board of Health that we strongly encourage the public to wear masks unless they're seated. And if we have food trucks, which I think we have 3 or 4 coming now, that we ask people to please wear a mask in the line. But, that's our recommendation. We're not going to be throwing people out or fining anybody, but we're hoping just to go a little slow with this. The other thing is, and I did send a notice to all town boards, but I learned today, which I did send to you, that the governor has put forth legislation to allow virtual meetings to continue until September 1st if municipalities want to continue while the state looks at whether there's a way to offer virtual for at least part of the meeting, things that we've talked about. So that is out there, but once this legislation's approved, then I will notify the public boards that they can still participate or hold meetings virtually until that time. So that's pretty much the highlight. We've got operations and programs going at the senior center, but we're trying to just keep everybody protected and proceed with caution. Okay. And then I have some contracts to ask you to approve. Dylan Brock, DBA Impact, Speed, and Agility for the Recreation Department at the price listed in their proposal. A contract amendment with Ty and Bond for professional engineering for the town farm water storage tank replacement or rehabilitation project in the amount of $70,000. A contract amendment with the MAPC for services by Upper Merrimack Valley Reserve Corps to pay Nancy Burns in the amount of $1,028. And then a purchase order, which was revised today for Apple for MacBook Air laptops in the amount of $58,425 as requested by the technology department.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the contracts and purchase orders?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor, Tom? Scott?
Aye.
Anita?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to waive reading of correspondence?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, just by a raise of hands, all those in favor? And finally, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Good enough. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Westford. Good night. Everybody stay safe and be well.
Same to you. Take care.
Good night, everyone.